Just hi, BookTube. I don't. Should I reference to you as BookTube? I'm not sure if BookTube. Anyways, sorry. I don't edit, so what you're getting is what you're getting. Hello, and welcome to my notes on House of Leaves. This is chapter 17. We are finally just about halfway through the book now. A little more than halfway. A few disclaimers. As I said, I don't edit, so what you get is what you get, including the flubs like calling you BookTube. And spoilers as well. There's lots of spoils in the book because I am talking about the references, and sometimes the book references itself, and future or past events that don't happen until pages further on from the chapter I'm talking about. So fair warning. Don't complain if you're spoiled for something big that happens. As always, we start with the epigraph, the inscription at the top of the chapter. Chapter 17 starts on page 384. Also, I do not speak any other language besides English, so forgive my pronunciation of words. So we have Waar du ook scheist. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. So this is a poem by Rilke. And the name of the poem is Entrance, or Entering, depending on your translator. And it continues from the footnote translation with this. With your eyes, which in their weariness barely free themselves from the worn-out threshold, you lift very slowly one black tree and place it against the sky, slender, alone, and you have made the world. And it is huge, and like a word which grows ripe in silence, and as your will seizes on its meaning, tenderly your eyes let it go. I thought it was significant to include more of that, the reference to the tree, which trees are very important in House of Leaves. As we see, we have a whole reference to Yggdrasil, the tree in Norse mythology here, and the ash tree lane, all sorts of references to trees and homes. Okay, page 385 over here. We have these different theories on the house. So we have the Kellogg-Antwerp theory, the Bichter, Frieden, Josephson criteria, and the Haven-Slocum thing. If you were ever looked up House of Leaves, they'd bring you to the House of Leaves forums on the Mark C. Danilewski website. They're hard to navigate now because they are no longer maintained. But this is one of the theories that they had on there, was that Kellogg-Antwerp, or KA, could mean kick-ass, which means that this is the proper theory. BFG could be big fucking joke, which means this is not a good theory. And HS, Haven-Slocum, HS could mean horseshit, which is, again, not a good theory. Just interesting thing to keep in mind there. Okay. Move my notes out of the way. 386. We're going to go down to this footnote, 359. National Geographic, volume 187. And I'm going to open the link here. As always, I will put the links in the description down below. And here's a copy of the of that magazine. It has this Grey Reef shark on it. And the article that is on page 187 is, it'll be easier if we takes place in this idea, 3 years across the Arctic. So page 94. We still got a ways to go. 187, 130. Where are we here? Sorry. Page 120. I was reading the wrong number. So page 120 is this article about 3 years spent in the Arctic, which we are on here. Starts here. Perilous journey. So I thought that was interesting. This idea, there's a lot of references previously on the chapter, I can't remember which chapter it was that talked about all the documentaries and stuff. There are a lot of documentaries about the Arctic. So there's this fascination with this vast, open landscape, kind of like maybe a contradiction to House of Leaves being more contained and dark and black, as opposed to like the Arctic, which you think of as white and open. Hey. Page 387. I was my brother's keeper. This is a reference to Cain and Abel. We had a chapter on them and other biblical brothers in chapter 11. So this is actually found in Genesis chapter 14, verse 9. This is Cain's answer to God after murdering his brother. He says, God's like, hey dude, where's your brother? And Cain's just like, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? Said much more biblically than sarcastically the guy just said, but you know. The passage continues, actually. I thought it was interesting. The Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. And we had a lot of references to wanderers, to the person wandering in the night. And this idea of not having fruitful not having the results that you want. Does that make sense? Okay. We get a reference to Louis Mierplat, who's not real. This cave, the Blue Sky Cave, was actually discovered by Baron Eugene von Ransonet. And so the Blue Skia Cavern is also known as the Blue Grotto. It is in Croatia. It was originally only accessible by actually diving. They had a small artificial entrance made to allow small boats into it. And the cave actually appears to glow blue in certain lights. Sorry, my mouth is moving faster than my mouth can keep up. So here's a picture of the blue grotto and how it glows blue. Blue being the significant color in House of Leaves. Down to the footnotes. 360 we get the New York Times, and I have a list of articles that appear in there. It's obviously a real magazine. From 1907. So this is just a list of articles. I couldn't find anything in here that farmers killed by cow. Sorry. Vichy and ferment. Economics, a Lawson survivor dies. So I couldn't find anxious to adopt a child. Russia warns China. Yeah. Lincoln's cabinet is saved. Gala Day in Tokyo. So I couldn't find anything about this article, Hollow Dark, or anything that could possibly be referenced to it. And trying to find the page, like if you click on something here, you can't. It's like really hard to find page 5.5, and then all this, paywall stuff jumps up, and I couldn't be bothered to buy a subscription to that. And then we have Film Comment, which is a real magazine, and I found this article. Copy of it here. Film content. Couldn't look into it, but we can look at the front cover, at least. Yeah. And then footnote 362, we have A. Ballard's apophatic. And this is really interesting. It's apophatic is describing something by what it is not. So, like, for example, this is not a red pen. It's more complicated than that, but you kind of get the idea. So this idea of describing the house by what it is not. And a Ballard is not a real person, but it could be a reference to J.G. Ballard. So, for example, if something is described as Ballardian, it means it's especially dystopian, modernity, bleak, man-made landscapes, and the psychological effects of the technological, social, or environmental developments. It's interesting because J.G. Ballard was obsessed with Eros and Thanatos, so the idea of love, sex, and death. And we get references to that further on. Thanatos, right there. Okay, we have this phrase, that house answers many yearnings, remember, and sorrow. So it's weirdly phrased, right? Like it doesn't make too much many yearnings. Sorry. That's my phone. Yeah. So if we use anachronize it, is that the right word? Anachronism? Nope. If we make an acronym out of those words, we get Thamyris. We get a reference to Thamyris on page 514. 514, page right here. Okay, I'm just going to ignore that. And I didn't highlight it, which is why I have this not red pen here. So the encoded appearance of Thamyris on page 387. So he tells us specifically that this is a code that we should be looking out for. And then we also have a reference on page 77, so we're going way back here. Page 77. I apologize if you can hear the steps upstairs too. This house is not very built very well. Page 77, we have thinking has another year missing resolved. Thinking has another missing year resolved in song, which also spells out Thamyris. So who's Thamyris? What does Thamyris mean? He's from Greek mythology. He challenged the Muses to a contest, and he lost that contest. As a result, he was blinded and stripped of his poetic ability. So who do we know was blind? Zampano was blind, and eventually was killed. So stripped of his poetic ability in that fashion. Through his poetic ability, we could argue that he was punished. So Thanatos is the son of night and darkness. He's the personification of death, the twin of sleep. He's a guide for the dead, although sometimes Hermes filled that role. Hermes is a significant character throughout House of Leaves as well. He's also the term used to refer to Freud's death drive, the drive to self-destruction. And we see a lot of that in House of Leaves, these people striving to destroy themselves through different means, and some of them successfully. Laszlo Firma, back to the footnote down here, is anagram for Maze for All. So that was interesting. Okay, page 388. Tons of notes here. Oh, I loved when I found this out. I'm going to share my joy finding out this phrase here. Noli me tangere. It's from the Bible. John chapter 20 verse 17. It's touch me not is the translation. I like the original Greek. Translate to stop clinging to me. So it's not like don't touch me. It's just like stop clinging. Stop grabbing at me. Stop trying to hold me in place. And it's said by Jesus to Mary Magdalene after the resurrection. And then it's also referenced in a poem by Petrarch. Yeah. So I'm going to read this poem out to you. not very long. Petrarch Sonnet 190. I'm just going to have a drink before I do that. Okay. A white doe on the green grass appeared to me, with 2 golden horns between 2 rivers in the shade of a laurel, when the sun was rising in an unripe season. Her look was so sweet and proud that to follow her I left every task, like the miser who as he seeks treasure sweetens his trouble with delight. Let no one touch me, she bore written with diamonds and topazes around her lovely neck. It has pleased my Caesar to make me free. And the sun had already turned at midday. My eyes were tired by looking but not satiated, when I fell into the water and she disappeared. So, let's go back to my notes. Could this possibly be a reference to Polyphena's deer-shaped locket? So we get a reference to this deer wearing a necklace, and we know that Polyphena's necklace was in the shape of a deer. The necklace on the deer, the poem says, "Touch me not, for I am Caesar's. I belong to him." And we also see the whale so letters. Let me actually grab my copy of the whale so letters. Easier said than done, apparently. I thought I saw them. And this is what I mean by I'm not editing. I thought they were more readily available. I guess not. Okay. I thought they were laid on top of something, but they're not. Okay, anyways, I'll just tell you what it says. Page 6 of the Whale Soul Letters, which is not, it contains more letters than the letters that we have in here, these letters from Polyphena. On page 6, we get a letter from Polyphena that states, "I can't see you, I don't remember you, I won't you," which I thought was interesting. Okay, and then we get this phrase, I don't speak Latin. I do not speak Latin, so excuse my pronunciation. Non enam videbit mi homo et vivit. That's what we're going to say. The actual translation is, "For no man shall see and live." It's another quote from the Bible, Exodus chapter 33, verse 20. God says this to Moses. So the footnote in the book is not an actual translation, but was what was used in an essay by Blanchot called "Literature and the Right to Death," which we'll open here. Oh, okay. I guess that link doesn't work anymore. Huh. Let's try that again. Just copy and paste this. Nope, okay. That link doesn't work anymore. I'll have to fix that. So we wrote this this thing called Literature and Death. I kind of summarized a bit of here. Literature begins at the moment when literature becomes a question. So he also wrote an essay called "The Essential Solitude" about writing and writers. And he had this notion that in speech, what dies is what gives life to speech. So speech is the life of that death. It is the life that endures death and maintains itself in it. So this idea of trying to capture life and death in writing and stuff is significant to House of Leaves. Okay. Page 389, we have this big blue X. Which, if we look at page 582, we have this references to different symbols, and X means unable to proceed. And then also on page 625, we see another big X being used here by Polyphena. So that was interesting. Page 390. God's a house. Our house is God. I just thought that was a significant thing for him to say. there's a lot of ideas about religion, not only just like Judeo-Christian religion, but also like Norse and Greek mythology and stuff like that as well. Page 391, and I miss Hansen and Latigo and all these names, so we're going to go through them. Hansen, Myrna Hansen was a actress in a movie with a character called Latigo, so these two are linked, called Man Without a Star, which was about many men follow a star to set their destination. I didn't watch the movie, but I thought that was interesting. A lot of references to films in House of Lease. PFC means private first class. Miserette could possibly be the female form of a miser, someone who hoards wealth, doesn't share, nasty person. Benton and Carl, and so Carl Benton Reed was an actor in a movie called Little Foxes, and Little Foxes is a reference to a biblical quote in Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verses 15. Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. Yeah, just thought that was interesting. Regio, in astronomy, it means a large area of a planet that is strongly differentiated in color. So blue, perhaps, maybe, or black. It could also reference to some. It has like similar origin meanings to like royal. I didn't find anything for Knucklebend or Zips. But it's interesting that this is in red and crossed out because we only see that actually in reference to the Minotaur. This could possibly be like these could possibly be soldiers. We see private first class and lieutenant, first lieutenant, those kind of names. So there was a ship called the USS Minotaur, which fought in the Pacific during World War II and then the Korean War, and we know that Johnny's father and Zampano both fought in the Pacific. It could also be a reference to on getting out of Vietnam, so the Vietnamese War that Navidson fought in. So that was a poem by Howard Nemerov, and this is a part of the poem that I thought was significant. Theseus, if he did destroy the Minotaur, it's hard to say, that may have been a myth, was careful not to close the labyrinth, so after kept on looking like before. Their quota of kids to Knossos, confident they would find something to die of and for. So obviously in reference to the Vietnamese War, but also referencing labyrinths and Greek mythologies and minotaurs, and this whole idea of this giant loop and sacrificing people to it. The kids of Knossos, the kids were sent to Knossos as a sacrifice to the Minotaur in the labyrinth. Okay, and then we're going to jump to page 394. Coleridge's Mariner. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is my all-time favorite poem. So it's about a sailor who's cursed to tell his tale over and over again. So he shot an albatross while on a sea voyage and cursed his fellow sailors, watching them die. And an albatross then hangs around your neck as a symbol of guilt. So this idea of telling a tale over and over and over again, the ideas of repetition and the labyrinth in here, and then the psychological effects of that as well, right? The guilt that the different characters may or may not carry with them. We have a reference to Dante. Delisle serves the same role as Beatrice. So Beatrice was Dante's ideal woman. She was the woman who guided him through Paradiso. We know a lot of Dante's Inferno, but we also have Dante going to paradise, and his guide there couldn't be... I always get Plato and Aristotle confused. They couldn't go into heaven because they weren't Christian. So he needed another person. It was Beatrice, who was his ideal woman. Down here we have a reference to Larry Burroughs, who was a real-life photojournalist in the Vietnam War. And the 1969 BBC film Beautiful, Beautiful is a real film, where some of the, this was like the tagline, some of the world's most talented photographers confront the realities that many of us would prefer to ignore. So yeah, Vietnam photography sounds like a Navidson there. Page 395. Lost Horizon is a book made into a movie and then made into a musical. So this idea of like different interpretations done through different mediums. So it's about Shangri-La. So a man is offered the opportunity to take over this kind of mystical paradise, but he decides to leave because he's developed a relationship with these other people who have decided to leave Shangri-La. But then he tries to make his way back, and whether he makes it or not is kind of left vague. It's not really unknown whether he makes it back to paradise, away from his relationships with other people. And then we get this reference again to Plenty of Root Beer and Summer Love, and that's referenced twice further on page 558. You get a reference here. Certainly not when there was summer love and root beer. These are just some poems that were included in the index. And then on page 593, we get a reference to May Your Summer Be Full of Root Beer, Joy, and Play. The Terrible Amounts of Love. From Pelafina to Johnny. So just another one of those weird connections. Footnote 373, Granta, Fall, 1995, page 45. Let's open up the link here. I found this, which isn't referred to fall, but is referred to as autumn, 1995. But big men and LA woman. Big as in substantial, powerful, famous. Men as in weak, wicked, and notorious. That was interesting. Then we move on to page 396. And this word stuck out to me, tangentiality. Yeah. I like weird words. This is a mental condition in which one tends to digress from the topic under discussion. Which I wrote here. Sounds familiar for some reason. Because, like, the whole book is one big tangent, really. Like, you think you're talking about one thing and then we turn directions and talk about other things, but it is actually all connected, is it? That's what I'm trying to do. That's what we try to do as readers, is create meaning out of this. Whether that's possible or not is another question. Page 397. It's my cat meowing, sorry. This whole paragraph right here, I'm just gonna circle it. This paragraph, page 397. I was like, how do they know this happens? Because it gets deleted. So how do they know that this gets deleted? I was like, how does Zampano know that this happened when it wasn't included in the video? So this is like things things are continuing to get more complicated, as does the Navidson record actually exist, and how does Zampano know that this happened if it wasn't included? Yeah. Page 398, let's move on. Footnote 380. We have D sleep and S sleep and NREM. So this is deep sleep and slow wave sleep. And slow wave sleep is also known as NREM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep, which is actually your most restorative type of sleep. Bessenung books. Bessenung is German for reflection. So thinking about things, but also the idea of mirroring, finding yourself in books or something, finding each other, like Zampano and Navi and Will and Pelifina are maybe all reflections of each other. Ernest Y. Hartman, he's a real person, but the book is not real. He is a psychoanalyst and a sleep researcher. T.S. Eliot Journal is not a real journal, but there's a quote from T.S. Eliot that I liked, so I included here. Can we only love something created in our own imaginations? Are we all in fact unloving and unlovable? Then one is alone, and if one is alone, then lover and beloved are equally unreal, and the dreamer is no more real than his dreams. So, the question of love, which I've argued and other people can argue, is that House of Leaves is a love story, but is it real? And is it all just a dream? I'm not going too in depth in these. These are just kind of like ideas and stuff, like just circulating. So theories come later. This is just the research. We have the Super Kamiokande detector, which is a neutrino detector in Japan. Don't ask me what a neutrino detector does, but it's a real thing. Cherenkov light is real. It's a type of radiation that emits a blue light. So we know the significance of blue in House of Leaves. And then we get this website, and it was a real website. It was when I made these notes initially, but then it eventually got taken down. I didn't think to take screenshots or anything. And it's not available on the Wayback Machine, but it was a Japanese website about how neutrinos can move through normal matter unimpeded and undetected. And so for every neutrino, there is also an anti-neutrino to balance it. Yeah. So for every something, there is the opposite of it to create a balance. And then we have this phrase, thou talks of nothing, from Romeo and Juliet. It's actually Romeo and Juliet. I read it when I was in grade 9. It is full of lots of like sexual innuendos, and this is one of them. Nothing was an innuendo for the female genitalia. So when Romeo says this to Mercutio, after Mercutio shares his dream of Queen Mab, he's like, you talk about the female genitalia. And another quote from this, talking about dreams and stuff, is dreamers often lie. Double meaning there, as in they're lying down, but also that they are not telling the truth. Yeah. More notes here. Page 399 now. Sartre's Huis Clos. I don't know. Je ne parle pas français. I know how to say I don't speak a lot of languages in those languages, but I don't actually know how to speak the languages. So this is No Exit by Sartre. It's the origin of the phrase hell is other people. So the idea that they can't escape this room, this house, this life. And then we have a reference to Dr. Dolittle. That's a movie from 1967, also subtitled The Search for the Great Pink Sea Snail, which is used as a sea vessel, and you get references throughout this now to various shells and stuff. And again, I always reference this, just take this off completely, to this image as kind of like a nautilus, a shell, a snail shell, if you will, a staircase, a dome roof, all those kind of fun things. Just make sure you're back in frame here. Just move that, sorry, over this way. There we go. It's weird because backwards on the camera. Anyway, so yeah, Dr. Dolittle, we get the beginning of ammonites, shells, that kind of stuff. Footnote 381, we get a reference to Edward Monod Herzen. He only published this one book. It actually is very rare, and I can't find much information on it. It's a book of broad scope and ambition, Princeps de Morphologie Generale. It's in 2 volumes. The first is dedicated to an analysis of form, defined forms, family of forms, association of forms, and to the relationship between form and function. And is concluded with an analysis of the transition from the forms of inert bodies to those of living matter. The second volume deals specifically with living matter and human morphology, and is concluded by analysis of the relations between morphology and aesthetics. From his correspondence with Volterra, it transpires that Monod Herzen was planning a further development of the Princeps de Morphologie Generale, of the completion of which there is, however, no trace. So the fact that this is a rare book, and that there was supposed to be more to it, but there's no trace of it happening, is also interesting in regards to House of Leaves being this kind of rare book that feels incomplete, that there's references to there being more to the book. Page 400. Okay, Bachelard. He's referenced at least 8 times by name in House of Leaves, and I've talked about him. So I'm not going to talk about him anymore. Bachelard, look him up yourself. Footnote 382. So, this is a reference to A Linguistic and Aesthetic Analysis of Visual Art in Melanesia by Giancarlo M. Scottidi. The Nautilus Pompilius is an example of the concept of perfection accomplished in nature. By choosing the Nautilus Pompilius as a symbol of imagination and the ability to produce concepts, the carver makes man and nature equal. Oh, these are different quotes from this book about the Nautilus Pompilius. So put that with that to try and keep it open a bit more. Sorry, just knocked the camera. Okay, the Nautilus, the process of growth of a nautilus is judged to be similar to the process by means of which a man produces concepts and nonverbal signs. That is, a concept develops from a given point and grows just like a nautilus. So I like that idea that we have this one point, in House of Leaves, what that one point is. We could argue many different things, but we then develop this kind of revolving, repetitive, labyrinthine idea around it. The Nautilus Pompilius, characteristic of preserving its form unaltered, thus expresses a value of norm and also symbolizes unalterability. At the same time, the asymmetry of the growth of the Nautilus Pompilius introduces alongside the principle of rigidity in the formal structure that of dynamism. So we have something that's normal and unaltered, or unable to be altered. But is also dynamic at the same time. So like strict, but within that strictness, there's interest. Yeah. The importance attributed to the doka on the formal level, the execution of perfect curvature, has a synchronic counterpart on the content plane. The carver must express to the outside world an ensemble of principles that enclose aesthetic philosophy of the group to which he belongs, such as the principle of harmony. Nautilus Pompilius expresses this principle just because its whorls are progressive additions to an initial point in respect to the latter structural form. And then there's this Reddit post that someone made on snails. And I made a video about Paris, and on page 633, this was about the Grand Staircase, I argued, but on page 633, you see listed out here, there's different places mentioned in House of Leaves, and this person came up with this design that it is, if you follow it like this, it's in the shape of a snail. See, like this. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, where are we? Footnote 383, which is over here. Girat J. Vermeij. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. He's actually real. He's an evolutionary biologist focusing on mollusks. Few works of architecture can match the elegance and variety of the shells of mollusks. I can't pronounce that word. My tongue. I can do it in my head, but my tongue just doesn't want to cooperate. Mollusks, sure. Beauty is reason enough to appreciate and study shells for their own sake, but shells offer much more. Sorry, this is going to be a long video. As mollusks grow, they enlarge their shells little by little, and in doing so inscribe in their shells a detailed record of the everyday events and unusual circumstances that mark their lives. Okay. Go over to page 401 here. We have this reference to the Sphinx's riddle. This is asked to Oedipus. And the question the Sphinx asks him is, what walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet in the afternoon, and 3 feet in the evening? And the answer is man. He starts out crawling, then he gets up on his 2 feet and walks, and then when he gets older, he often has to have a cane or something to help him walk. From Wikipedia, I liked the way this was phrased, so I just copied and pasted it. Bested at last, the Sphinx then threw herself from her high rock and died. Or in some versions, Oedipus killed her. An alternative version tells that she devoured herself. In both cases, Oedipus can therefore be recognized as a liminal or threshold figure, helping effect the transition between the old religious practices represented by the death of the Sphinx and the rise of the new Olympian gods. So this idea of liminal space, it's like hallways are liminal. They're transition spaces between two functional spaces, even though liminal spaces are also functional. So like between the kitchen and the dining room, even just the door frame, the archway or whatever would be a liminal space. So the argument is that the hallway in House of Lace is a liminal space, a space of transition, of something changing. And in Oedipus's case, it was a transition from old religion to new religion. Okay, then we jump down here to, speaking of religion, Dionysius is don't ask me to say that word either. This is actually also called, an easier way to say this, the ear of Dionysus. So it's a cave in Sicily, known for looking like an ear and the echoes in it. Not named after the god Dionysus, but the tyrant Dionysus I of Syracuse, who held prisoners in the cave so he could hear their secrets. Because of the acoustics of the cave, you could hear them. Ariadne's thread. So Ariadne gave Theseus a ball of thread when he went into the labyrinth so he could retrace his steps and get out again. And she loved him, and he married her, but he had no love for her. He abandoned her on Naxos, where she was then claimed by Dionysus as his wife. So, get rid of the guy that doesn't love you, marry a god. Amnesis, is the ability to recall past events. It could also be a medical history of a patient, or a quotation of exemplary authors from memory to establish one's authority. So recalling past events. We do a lot of that in House of Lace. This could be a medical history of either Johnny or Polyphena, or Mark C. Danilewski himself, it seems sometimes. And we have lots of epigraphs, so quotation of exemplary authors. The form of an ear, which is what this is. There are lots of references to ears in here, and then also on page 113, we had a lot of references to, are these the ones here? Yeah. Phrases here: ampullary crest, semicircular duct, maculae, utricle, saccule, references to the inner ear, which affects your balance. And concha, which is Spanish for shell. page 402, we get this quote, c'est un escargot énorme. And they give you a translation, but I prefer this other translation I found. From the Poetics of Space, which is referenced throughout House of Leaves, is where this is also used. I prefer this translation. It is a giant snail descending the mountain, with at its sides the brook's white foam, very old, only one horn left, which is its short, square belfry. And then the poet adds, Le château est sa coquille. Yeah, which means the manor or house is its shell. And the snail is the size of a village. So, I thought that was interesting that the shell is its house. Okay. 4:03 over here, 3:19 a.m. Significant date, March 19th. We're going to go over to page 629. Right here. For this letter from March 19th, 1988. It's a letter from Pelafina where she explains how she tried, or maybe she did succeed, to strangle Johnny. Put my hands around her throat. And this is the event that led her to being placed in Walstow. Also, John, I was thinking John 3:16, but I looked up John 3:19, and this is the phrase from there. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. She tried. Johnny was the light, but her deeds were evil. Here we have the phrase rathe nuclei, which is a part of the brain, I believe, that produces serotonin and supports wakefulness. The part that a lot of us need more of. Plum colored down here. Plum colored. Pelafina's color is purple. Plums are purple. Topha beta. Topha is not a Greek letter, so I thought maybe it could mean to fa. Fa means sky in Vietnamese, and the sky is blue, so to the blue, maybe. I thought it was really reaching here with some things. And Vietnam is significant to Navid Sin. Also, Pha Dinh is a place in Vietnam, and to get to Dien Bien Phu, the battle where Zampano fought, I talked about that like in an introduction to House of Leaves. You have to go through Pha Dinh, so to Pha could be alluding to Zampano. You have to go to Pha Dinh to get to Dien Bien Phu. My hands dipped in boiling oil. These are referencing Johnny's scars. So we're learning a lot about Johnny and the trauma that he had gone through as a kid. So we see on page 627 the I never meant to burn you. You were only 4. So Pelafina admits to hurting Johnny here, dipped in boiling oil. And then on page 129 we get another reference to just the scars, the biggest ones, of course, being the ones you know about, the strange seething melt running from the inside of both elbows all the way up to the end of both wrists. Yeah. And then on page 404, we get, I know my ribs still protrude like violet bows, and violet, again, purple and ribbons are associated with Pelafina. And then Johnny goes on a tangent here, so he's suffering from that tangentiality that we talked about before, which is a psychiatric order that was ascribed to Chad on page 396 over here. Okay, 405, we're moving over here. As it turned out, I ran into Kiri. This is where he goes on the tangent. Page 405, towards my shoulder. Clavicle, at the one of the bones in your shoulder, is also referred to as a key, and we see that on page 50. The fragile collarbone, the clavicle, tracing a shadow of a, can't write the word, in the shadow of a key. So, interesting use of the bones in the body as a key to opening something. Page 406. Thank you for sticking around. I know this video is long. We're almost done though. 406, we get a reference to Jonah, and I did not highlight. Jonah, the guy who got swallowed by a whale, he fell asleep on a boat during a storm and then offered himself up as a sacrifice to calm the storm, and then was swallowed by the whale. I wrote here initially about Navidson sacrificing himself to the house to keep it calm, because as he enters it, these peer post-exposure effects rating disappear. But we also know that Johnny was on a boat during the storm as well. And I'll look up that page later. And then footnote 393, over on page 407, we get this phrasing, the subject of the tree branches is often the subject of the self, and I thought that could possibly be a reference, again, to Yggdrasil, this idea of all the branches and parts that lead to different things. So that's it. That's my notes on chapter... Is that chapter 17? Oh, yes. Thank you so much for hanging around for the length of this video. How long are we in here? Oh, it's not even an hour yet. Let me know your thoughts on chapter 17, and thank you so much for watching.